Big Break podcast, where we delve into the rich history of jazz to celebrate artists, entrepreneurs, and jazz enthusiasts alike. Join our host, Dr. Dina Bennett, well-known ethnomusicologist and executive director of the American Jazz Museum, on a journey into the stories behind the art. Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of The Big Break, a podcast produced by the American Jazz Museum. Today's episode brings you a little bit of a twist. I am your guest host, Chiara Cooper, the Director of Marketing and Communications at the American Jazz Museum. As you've gone through this audible journey with us, you've heard from visual artists, musical greats, entrepreneurs, filmmakers, and more. We would be remiss if we did not give you the story of Dr. Bennett. Yes, that Dr. Bennett, your podcast host. Join us as we walk down the path from ethnomusicologist to executive director. Hey, so I'm here with Dr. Bennett, and she is the executive director of the American Jazz Museum. And we're just going to quickly go through her professional and educational background and then understand what her big break is. So, Dr. Bennett, thank you for joining us on this lovely podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Anytime I can talk about the American Jazz Museum and my role, I'm pleased to do so.
Yes. So let's start it off. Can you share a bit about your educational background and how it influenced your career path?
So I've had a varied career. Professionally, I started off wanting to be in communications because I felt like communications would give me a lot of latitude to do a lot of different things. So I went to Washburn University undergraduate, majored in communications.
Super excited. Hometown.
And, yes. Woohoo. And actually now I'm a trustee for the university. So it's really nice to be able to be in a different role and to give back. But when I graduated from there, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, even with communications. But I did know that I was a first generation student, first in my family to go and get a degree. And that I wanted to help other first generation students or students in general who were not first generation learn how to negotiate the college campus. So that led me to Kansas State University and a master's program in college student personnel, or higher ed as they call it. So I spent about 5 years in that field. I worked at Bethany College in Linsport, Kansas, Kansas State University for about 4 years in a variety of positions. And then decided that I was getting a bit burnout of that kind of work. And I had turned 30, so I had a major milestone in my life. And I decided I needed to go do something that I was really passionate about and shift gears. And so I grew up in a musical family. I had an opportunity as a young person to be in a musical arts program. They had recognized my talent and they had given me a scholarship to take piano lessons, and which I kept up all the way through high school. Oh, wow. And so I was able to lean back on that experience and growing up in the musical family and decided that I would go get a Ph.D. in music. But when I found out about what I wanted to do and was explaining it to my professor, the woman that eventually became my professor, she said, that's ethnomusicology.
Wow.
It had a name.
Yes.
I had never heard of that before, but I was glad there was a name. And she said, you need to come study here, which was Indiana University.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I went to visit the campus and then I went back as a student. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I resigned from Kansas State University and my work there to go and start the Ph.D. program in ethnomusicology.
Okay. So since you brought up ethnomusicology, could you define what that is and
sure
give us a little dive deeper into the topic?
I can. So, if you think about it as really a two-part word, there's the ethno, which is the cultural part, dealing with people. And then there's the musicology, which is the music. So dealing with music making in communities, the way that people use music, its function and role in their lives. In African American music is part of everything from birth to the grave. So, when we have children or even if we have a baby shower or something, there's music, and then all in between, all the way to the grave, music is so critical for a funeral, and a celebration of life as well. And that's the way it is in African communities as well. So that's something that, it's African retention that we have. So, ethnomusicology, that's what we do. Many people study different kinds of music. So there are ethnomusicologists who are specialists in Brazilian music and African music and Japanese music and Chinese music, and we're like anthropologists of music.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
We're required to do field work. And so I had a friend who she happened to be Japanese, but she was studying Polish music. So, so she went to Poland to do her field work and, whatever her topic was within that particular discipline, of the Polish music. And friends who have studied Brazilian music would go to Brazil.
Oh, okay.
Now, for me,
where'd you go?
Well, I decided to come to 18th and Vine.
Okay.
Yes,
I love it.
Because I was studying jazz.
Yes.
And jazz is an American and an African American genre of music. It is now global. It is now multicultural. But let's not forget that its roots are in African American culture, stemming from Congo Square in New Orleans, where the Africans would go on Sundays to dance, to set up a market where people could come and buy different wares.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that square is still up and running to this day. So
yeah,
most that's definitely great to know the history of that square.
Yeah.
Aware of that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Dr. Bennett, what drew you to the field of music and arts management?
So I think a lot of it has to do with that early background in music and going to the camp. The camp was called the Melanie Brown Fun Factory.
Yeah, you're very familiar.
Yes. And Melanie Brown was a young lady who would be my age as she had lived. And she was run over by a car. And so her parents created this program. And so the program, at the time I went through it, had art, dance, theater, music, and that may be it. But they saw that I had ability in music. And so that's where my scholarship came from.
Oh, wow.
For me to go and take piano lessons. And then I took them all the way up until the 12th grade, eventually having, to pay for them myself. But with that, I became a minister of music in my church. So I began playing for Sunday school, and then I began playing for the choir at church, and then I became over the choir. There were a lot of lessons there, just in general, not only playing in front of people, but also being able to be in front of people, and speak in front of people, and to try to feel as comfortable as I could in front of them.
Yes.
So, but that's where all of this, it's been a part of me. And somehow when I, reached that point at age 30, it was like, I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. And not just as a side gig. And then my father, who was a musician with his brother, and they had a band and they made a couple of 45s. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That was pretty awesome. So his brother was the band leader, but my dad was the vocalist, the bass player, and the harmonica player.
How did he complete all of those tasks in one recording? Harmonica.
Yeah, really. Well, if you know Jimmy Reed, who is a blues artist, my dad loved Jimmy Reed. So he would sing in the style of Jimmy Reed, and then he would play harmonica. He learned harmonica down south when he was in the Army.
Okay.
And he eventually brought the harmonica into the church. And if you bring the harmonica into the Black church, they're going to love it.
Oh, okay.
But it's sacred secular. Yes,
secular
it is.
Music. So,
exactly. So what that means is that the harmonica is considered a secular instrument, worldly, bringing it into a sacred environment of the church.
Okay.
But it's a familiar sound for African Americans, the harmonica.
Yeah.
And to see how versatile it can be in a sacred setting, it was very welcomed.
Nice.
Yeah.
So he was the modern day Ray Charles in a sense, it sounds like.
He was pretty awesome. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I could eventually accompany him at church. And he would sing usually a solo before the sermon. And I would be at the keys.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So tell me then, what were some key milestones within your career into becoming the executive director for the American Jazz Museum?
So I think that, majoring in ethnomusicology and telling my professor right off, I am not trying to be a tenure track professor. I'm not trying to be in the classroom like that. I want to be in the museum world. And so from then on, she made sure that my graduate assistantships were on the Indiana campus, the Archives of Traditional Music. Okay. And then the Archives of African American Music and Culture, which she started on the campus. Then we had the Society of Ethnomusicology conference on the campus, and we were bringing in Johnny Otis.
Okay. All right.
And his review. And so I did an exhibition in her archives using those materials on Johnny Otis. And so I installed it in the main library on the campus. And then that was on the Roots of Rhythm and Blues. And then in the student union, I did the exhibition on Johnny Otis. And so Johnny Otis came to campus. Okay. He performed.
Wow.
Got a photo with him. Used his book.
They should have
all of that.
One of the schools named after you. That sounds like you were able to execute such a great task and to bring, such great talent to the campus. That's amazing. I don't know how many other artists, have stopped by the university, but that's pretty.
Yeah. So cool. when you're dealing with Dr. Portia Malsby, who was my professor, she is one of the foremost African American music scholars.
Okay.
In the nation. So she has those kind of connections. And I realized, I knew I was studying under someone special, but I realized it when I went back for her retirement a few years ago. And I was like, wow, thank you, Lord.
Yes. Shout out to her.
Most definitely. Amazing. And of course, this particular chart here, which is the evolution of African American music, was done by Dr. Malsby. And it shows all the interconnectedness of all the genres that are considered African American genres of music.
Nice. This looks really, really good. I definitely will have to check it out a little later. Has a lot of good information and timeline and pathways to the evolution of African American music.
Most definitely. And you'll see that, when you talk about key milestones, you'll see that in the National Museum of African American Music.
Oh, wow.
Which was opened in 2021. And I was the curatorial director for that. And Dr. Malsby was the lead scholar.
Oh, wow.
So all of those genres, the museum features over 50 plus genres that were developed and created by African American.
Do you want to dive deeper into that, your experience at the African American Music Museum and just what impact you left while being there and just how often you visit or things like that?
Yes, I usually visit. Let's see, I left in 2021 shortly after the museum opened. And then I went back like 3 months later.
Okay.
And then I think in 2022, I wasn't able to go back. But in 2023, which was last year, we had the Association of African American Museum Conference there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was able to go back and I was able to take 5 of my teammates here at the museum. And so I was really glad that they got a chance to go and experience it.
Yeah.
And then I was able to go back probably about maybe 3 weeks ago or so because I'm on the board of the Blues Foundation and we had our board retreat there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. How has your career in arts management evolved over the years? And could you tell me what has been some of your proudest achievements?
So I usually tell people that, people close to me, that there are not very many ethnomusicologists who are leading institutions like the American Jazz Museum. Mm-hmm. We're usually looked at as consultants because we have specialties, or contractors. Mm-hmm. So for me to now be leading an institution like this, I'm really honored, and it's exciting. So that is definitely something that I'm not sure I had aspired to early on. I knew I wanted to work in a museum, but I had not really thought about leading one. Okay. So throughout my journey, I have been a director of education. That was at the B.B. King Museum and Delta Interpretive Center in Indianola, Mississippi. I have been a manager of collections and exhibitions. That was here. Probably about, 16 years ago or so. So I worked in the collections area, and then at the National Museum of African American Music, I was a curatorial director. So I had another curator that worked with me, and we had a whole curatorial team. So we were able to work on the galleries, the content. We're content people, what story are we trying to tell? So we worked with the story writer, let's tell it accurate. That was the first time that we had a curatorial team of people that were African American that could actually tell their own story. Oh, wow. A lot of times in museums that deal with African American history and culture, we're not the ones telling our own story. So I'm really excited that we got to control the narrative.
Yes. Very important.
Very important. And so that work was just awesome. Choosing the images, choosing the songs, working with the exhibit designers, working with the exhibit graphic team who did all the digital interactives that were cutting edge technology, and really making it a great experience, a very immersive experience for the public, so that they could understand that African American music is lived experience. It comes from the people.
Yep.
So it's not divorced from that. We had a lot of people come through the museum that said, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was so much history here. I don't know if they thought they were just going to come in and get a bunch of music or what, but you also understand the cultural, social, spiritual, economic, all of those things, all the circumstances that would give rise to conditions under which people would create these expressive forms.
So, yes, that's amazing. We are excited to have the American Jazz Museum grow in that capacity one day. So,
most definitely, yes.
Happy to have you, Dr. Bennett, here to help lead on that project. So, what does a typical day look like for Dr. Bennett as the executive director of the American Jazz Museum?
So a typical day is definitely full of meetings. So whether it's meeting with the staff or meeting with some external partners, many times it's here on site. Sometimes I go off site. Some meetings are lunch meetings as well. There are times where someone may pop up. You never know. So you always want to make sure that you're ready.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
There it is. So someone may come and, you may be called down to greet them, or maybe someone, even a television team might show up and, we were just in the neighborhood, or we tried to call, and we wanted to come down for a minute to film something. So then you need to make sure you greet them, or you may have something planned. Something else planned on your schedule, but then something comes up that you needs priority. So you have to let the other thing go and try to reschedule it, or Yeah. So those type of things. Being an ambassador for the museum is certainly part of my duties, as well as trying to raise money for the organization. We have a development director that came on board about 3 months ago, so I am working closely with her to make sure we can keep our name and our image in front of donors.
The lights on.
So yes, you know it. So there's always something. I guess it's never a dull moment.
Yes.
We also have the Blue Room, and we had a special guest a few weeks ago, so I needed to come back early from the 4th of July vacation to make sure that I greeted him properly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So within the American Jazz Museum, we have the Blue Room. Do you want to speak a little bit about the Blue Room?
Sure.
Any celebrities that you think have been memorable with their stop through, either enjoying the band or performing, or any highlights about the Blue Room?
So the Blue Room used to be an actual club here in the district.
Okay.
And it was part of the street hotel. Reuben Street had the street hotel, and within it was the Blue Room.
Nice.
And so now we have the Blue Room on the corner of 18th and Vine, which is a museum exhibition. We have some exhibits in the Blue Room, but it's also that live functioning club 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, and Monday. We're very happy that we could, pay homage to the real Blue Room. Most recently, we had the actor Wendell Pierce in the Blue Room who came to listen and chill. And he became a member.
Okay.
So we're excited about that.
Yes.
And then in the past, which was before I was here as the director, we had Prince.
What?
Yes, Prince stopped by.
Nice.
And I do believe that some of his band members joined in on stage with the musical ensemble that we had that night. And so that's probably our biggest musical artist that has come through. But I know there have been others. But that's definitely top of the list.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Let's pivot a little bit. Tell me, who are some of your personal heroes or mentors in the field of jazz and arts management?
Oh boy, let's see. So I have had some mentors here and there. I probably have to say Dion Brown is one. He was my supervisor or my boss at the B.B. King Museum and Delta Interpretive Center. I learned quite a bit from Dion. Dion went on to become the founding director of the National Blues Museum in St. Louis. And he is now the executive director of the National Museum of African American Music in Nashville.
Oh, wow.
So
that's cool.
He kind of ended up there.
Yes.
And so I would say definitely Dion.
Okay. Any others?
So I'm on the board of the Association of African American Museums. And so there's so many talented people there. And I made sure, and that was at Dr. Malsby's recommendation back in 2003.
Wow.
That I get associated with that organization.
Okay.
And so I've been going off and on since 2003. There were several times where I was working in student affairs and they would not have paid for me to go to we call it AAAM for short, a AAAM conference.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have anything to do with working with students, right? Or at least, that job I was doing. So I would save up the money and go myself. And then Margaret Burroughs. She was the founder of the DuSable Museum in Chicago.
Okay.
Now, she came out of what we call the Black Museum movement of the 60s, where African Americans were founding museums in their homes. She and Dr. Charles Wright, and he was a doctor, but the Charles Wright Museum of African American History up in Detroit bears his name.
Okay.
So, so for the Association of African American Museums, there is a Burroughs Wright named after those two pioneers.
Okay.
Burroughs Wright Fellow. So one year I won the Burroughs Wright's Fellow to go to the conference. And now I'm on the board since 2003. Since 2003. And I'm like, you just got to be determined, to stay connected. And that has been my career. It has been, I've worked in 3 different African American music museums. So for an ethnomusicologist, that's pretty awesome.
Right up your alley.
The world is narrow.
Right.
Or that's very narrow field to be in.
So how do you inspire the next generation of ethnomusicologists?
So I think that, number one, they need to know it exists. And that's why I'm always so geared up when there's a young person that wants to come and intern or wants to be a volunteer or a group wants me to come out and talk, because I just think it's so important that people know that you have options. If you're interested in music, you don't always have to major in music education to become involved in the music field. There are other options. This one is not talked about often. So I want people to know that you can be an ethnomusicologist without having a musical background.
Wow.
My friend, Dr. Stephanie Shonigan, who is a dean at the University of Maryland, did not have a music background. What she did was she had a master's in African American literature. Okay. And so what she ended up doing her dissertation on is something, it was a biography of an African American opera singer. Mm-hmm. So that was what she did. And she has taught at several universities and done different things too. But I think it's also important that the parents support the children. If you see that these children have some kind of talent or some kind of interest in music or the arts, my hope is that the parents would support that child, because you never know what can happen as they continue to grow up. You know, it just might be the thing. Maybe they go off into something else, but they might return to it. That's what I did. And I had a lot of supportive people around me, a lot of people in my church, a lot of people in my family. Sometimes they didn't know what a dissertation meant and why was it taking me so long to finish. But then when my mom sat in on the defense and then I became Dr. Dina Bennett, she was like, I get it. You have worked hard. And I'm like, well, you supported me all the way.
Dr. Bennett, tell me about your big break.
I think I've had a few big breaks, but what comes to mind is in 2017, I was working at the Mulvane Art Museum, which is on the campus of Washburn University in Topeka. And I was the associate director and programs person. And I was like, you know what? I think I need to go back into, I had left B.B. King and had done a stint back at K-State in student affairs. And then I had gone on to the Mulvane, and I was like, you know what? I need to go do African-American music and culture. And I know they're building that museum in Nashville. That's where I need to be, because that's what I do. So I called the director and I said, I need to be there. And, he was looking for a seasoned person. He had already hired a curator. He was looking for a more seasoned person to kind of be the curatorial director and kind of galvanize all these things together, because they were getting ready to build out the galleries and the storyline and all of that. So they flew me down for one day. I flew in, did the interview, and they flew me back. And then he came to Kansas City and we went to Gates and
shout out to Gates.
Hello. And then he flew back, and then I got the position for an ethnomusicologist. Building a National Museum of African American Music is where you want to be.
Wow.
Yeah. And so amazing. I'm so proud. Diana Williams, who's, kind of the mother of June is Black Music Month. She said, this is the house that Dina built. Yes. And I said, yes, it is. So that was a big break. And then there's the opportunity to lead this prestigious institution, the American Jazz Museum, and becoming executive director. So when I came back about 3 years ago, I came back as a director of curatorial affairs. And then that eventually led to deputy director. And while I was deputy director is when the former director left. And then I became an interim executive director. And then after that, I became executive director this past January.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Yes. It's definitely my pleasure, especially from a graduate student who did their dissertation on this museum in this district, to actually know what went into the storyline here and the content here, and capturing interviews with the founding director, Dr. Rowena Stewart, who came out of the Black Museum movement, and just knowing the foundation of this place and where they were trying to go 27 years ago when they built it. And so having that knowledge has me in a great position to take it into its next 27 years. And I'm looking forward to
we all are
leading that charge.
How exciting. Yes. Well, Dr. Bennett, we've enjoyed your time here with us on the Big Break podcast. And we look forward to many more successes that you'll have and achievements in the future. And that is it. Thank you for joining us for the Big Break podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to an episode of the Big Break podcast. Now be sure to like, review, and subscribe to the Big Break on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. We also want to thank Missouri Humanities. Their financial support helps us in connecting Missourians to the people, places, and ideas that shape society. So stay connected for more incredible conversations from the American Jazz Museum, because this is where jazz lives.